Hey everybody, it's John from JB Subtle Gaming, and we're doing our third part of our Armada tutorial on attacking. Now, attacking is a really complicated subject, so let's go ahead and get right down to the play area and get talking about it. Alright, well when attacking, a big thing to determine is who can you attack? And you remember, ships can attack from two different hull zones, and squadrons in general can attack in any direction around them, but they only get to attack once. So when I'm declaring an attack, I want to make sure a ship is within my hull zone. So if I want to attack from, say, the side hull zone of the Imperial Corvette here, obviously the side hull zone of the Nebulon B frigate is within that side hull zone. If I want to attack from the front hull zone here, though, we can see that it is not. So this is my front arc here, so I would not be able to attack the Nebulon with my front hull zone. I would, however, be able to attack both squadrons. I'm just barely catching that one squadron's base along my front arc there. I am touching it, and then obviously this one is within range as well. And when I attack, I can either attack all of the squadrons in a hull zone or one ship. So when attacking from my side hull zone, I could attack this squadron here, but if I did, I wouldn't be able to attack the ship as well. So that's a big thing to determine, all the squadrons or one enemy ship. Now, when determining line of sight is when you use the little dots around the base of this. So in this example, I wouldn't be able to attack, say, the enemy's rear hull zone because I draw a line from dot to dot, and this line passes through another hull zone of this ship. So I'd have to be going through the ship and then getting to the rear, which obviously I can't really do that. So in this case, I don't have line of sight to the enemy's rear arc. However, I would have line of sight. Well, actually, this case wouldn't work very well. So if we turn the ship a little bit, I do have line of sight, though, because you can see the Corvette's hull zones are a little bit differently. The lines don't go to the edges. So you want to make sure they are in your arc, that you have line of sight. Now, if they are in your arc and you have line of sight, you can attack. There are some things that can change that, though, at least the dice you're going to roll. So when determining the dice you want to roll, you'd want to use this range roller here. So let's say our interdictor here wants to attack the rear hull zone of the Corvette. So we're definitely, if we're attacking from our side, they're definitely within our arc. And I can put this down and basically go from shortest point to shortest point. In this example, you can see we're in medium range. I have red and blue dice on the side here, so I can use all of my dice. If, however, the ship was just a little bit further away and they're now in long range, then I'd only be able to use the red dice. Now in this case, that would be pretty bad, because again, if I draw that line of sight line, this line goes through another ship. It doesn't matter if the ship is my ship or my enemy's ship. If it goes through another ship, I can still take that shot, but I lower the number of dice I roll by one. So I only have one red die over here, so at long range, lowering that number by one, I basically can't attack unless I have something that ups the number of dice. Now, if the ship was a little bit closer, however, then I'd be able to use my one red, my three blue dice, and I would determine which one of those dice I want to reduce. Now, shots are also obstructed if they pass through obstacles. So in this case, I'm passing through this obstacle here. So if this ship wasn't here, the shot would still be obstructed. But both of these things being here doesn't mean I'm double obstructed. I still only ever reduce the number that I roll by one. Now with squadrons, in general, they can only attack within range 1 of the squadron movement dial. Now, in this situation, though, let's say these headhunters, they would not be able to attack the Imperial Corvette because they are engaged with this enemy squadron. Because again, if you're within distance 1 of an enemy squadron, and there are some rules where you aren't engaged if the enemy ship is heavy or things like that, other keywords. We're not going to get into every example. But in this case, these squadrons are all engaged with each other. So if the headhunters want to attack, their only option would be to attack the enemy squadrons here. Now, if this wasn't the case, though, then any hull zone they have available to attack, they would be able to attack the ship. Now, one thing you want to bear in mind is, again, the dice for what you attack on the hulls, if you're attacking another ship, are all down here, and that's all fine and dandy. And here's the anti-squadron. So in this case, if the Nebulon was wanting to attack another squadron, they would be able to roll one blue. Now, they don't have to be within range 1. They get to use normal ranges here. So we're definitely within blue range, and that's how I determine if I would be able to attack that squadron. So that's relatively simple. Squadrons also have kind of the same thing, where they have something that they roll against other squadrons and against ships. In general, though, they do have to be within that distance 1. There are things that can break that example, obviously, and pretty much anything I mentioned, there are examples where that isn't going to be the case. So we've talked about if you were in a hull zone, who you can attack, one ship or all the enemy squadrons. We've talked about obstruction. So let's talk about actual attacking. Now, as you know, there are 3 colored dice in the game. There is red dice. They do have a double hit symbol. They have blank sides, they have hit sides, and they have one of these accuracy symbols. The blue dice have multiple accuracy symbols and some crits and some hits, so this is the critical hit here. Now, the thing about them, they don't have any misses, and accuracy can be really wonderful or it can be terrible depending on the situation, what you want. Black dice have some blank sides, they have some hits. They also have these really cool sides with a critical hit and a regular hit. So let's talk about when different things apply. So basically, one thing to bear in mind is whenever we're talking about squadrons, critical hits don't matter anytime a squadron is involved in combat, whether they are doing the attacking, whether they're attacking another squadron or another ship. Again, there are things that break that rule, like bomber squadrons hit ships on criticals and things like that. But in general, we're not worried about critical hit symbols at all. So if the headhunters roll against the is it interceptors we have out there? I'm not even sure. Whatever they roll against, and they roll something like this, then they would basically have one hit. The critical doesn't matter. In general, again, unless a card says otherwise, criticals only matter in ship-to-ship combat. Now let's actually talk about some ship-to-ship combat. So in this case, let's say that, let's even move this out of here to make it simpler. We are rolling with 1 red and 3 blue dice. We don't even really need to check. Yes, we're definitely within medium range, so we'd be able to use all of the dice that we would have in this example. So I'm going to go ahead and roll that, because the first thing you do in an attack resolution is declare the target. So I'm going to attack from my side hull zone to my opponent's side hull zone here, and I'm going to attack the dice. Or roll the dice, and then I would be able to, actually I'm missing a blue. Now I would be able to resolve effects. So for this example, let's actually pretend I got an accuracy token, and then we'll actually get into defensive tokens and how they work, because that is the next step of an attack. We can see here that the Rebel Corvette would normally have these 3 tokens. This is an evade token, and they have 2 of it. This is a redirect, this is a thing called contain, this is scatter, and this is brace. These tokens are not a part of this ship, but I'm including them so that we can talk about those in this example. Now, in general, the evade tokens don't do any good in close range, and we'll talk about them in just a second. So let's say we're definitely at close range, and if I rolled an accuracy token, well, I'm going to pick my opponent's redirect token, because what an accuracy token does, it allows you to select one of your opponent's defensive tokens and say, you cannot use that this round. So because these don't do them any good, then blocking this off would be great. Basically, they can't use any defensive tokens. But let's talk about what these tokens actually do. So first of all is this evade. The evade's really great at long range. So let's say we were at long range and we were only rolling 1 red die. Basically, I can say, nope, cancel that die. I can get rid of a die on an evade, and I get to choose which one it is. If we're at medium range, however, I get to choose a die to re-roll. So let's say I would choose them to re-roll this double hit, because that would be really bad. And we've got a blank. That's great. So if you're at medium range, it isn't as effective, but it can still be pretty good, although you can get a worse result, like going from a hit to a double hit. So that is the evade tokens that are, in general, are good at long and medium range. Redirects are pretty important, and let's say in this example, this ship had all of its starting shields. So it had 1 on its side, and 2 in the rear, and 3 in the front. So being able to stop this redirect is really important, because what redirects do is they allow you to transfer the damage to an adjacent hull zone. So in this case, I would be able to transfer it to the front hull zone or the rear hull zone, not to the side hull zone because it isn't adjacent. I also can't split up where the damage is done. So if this is our original roll, and I was able to use my redirect token, let's say this wasn't in there, then I could take, say, 1 on here and then 2 on the backside, or I could take all 3 on the front. Now, why is that good? Because I'm not taking any damage cards, and there are no critical effects going through. Now, critical effects are really interesting. Now, one of the big things about Armada that is different than X-Wing is even if all of these were critical hits, I only get to resolve 1 critical effect. This isn't like X-Wing where you can get multiple critical effects, and every ship has the ability to do a standard critical effect. So what is that? That actually is the same as an X-Wing. The first damage card that was dealt, we dealt face up. So in this example, if I had this accuracy and I said, nope, you can't use your redirect, I'm taking all 3 damage on this side. I'm going to reduce my shield down to 0, and then I'm going to take 2 damage cards, and the first is going to be dealt face up. And that's bad news because, well, first of all, damage cards are bad because once we reach our hull value, our ship is blown up, and we only have a hull value of 4 here. So I'd be taking 2. The first one would be face up, and then the second one would be face down. Now these can do all different kinds of things. So for example, this one says you cannot ready your defense tokens. So what does that mean? Actually, that's really worked out well. So normally at the end of a round, you're able to flip all of these defense tokens back over. So if I'd used this earlier, I'd be able to flip it back over to the green side. And as long as I had that card on my ship, I wouldn't be able to do that anymore because that's a critical effect. There are double damage cards, there are all different kinds of things. And in general, critical effects are pretty bad in Armada. So now that brings us to this token here. This token, the contain token, it's only on large ships as far as, they might have changed that, I'm not sure. But that allows me to cancel the basic critical effect. Now here's the thing, there are other critical effects in the game. You can take certain upgrade cards that give you different critical effects. And if your opponent chooses one of those, so again, no matter how many criticals I roll, I don't get to choose one critical effect. But if I'm choosing a special one and not the standard one, that token doesn't work. But it will stop the standard critical effect, so I wouldn't have taken a face-up damage card, I would have just taken 2 damage cards. Scatter's really nice, it basically just cancels an attack. In general, you only find scatter on squadrons. There are a couple small ships that do have that ability, so you really want to get an accuracy token if you're shooting against a ship that has scatter or squadrons that has scatter. Brace basically halves the damage rounded up. So in this case, we had 3 total damage, and that's something to bear in mind. Critical effects are in addition. Basically, when you're talking ship to ship, a critical is a hit. So I have 3 damage, and I get to resolve 1 critical effect. It doesn't take away the damage by using the critical effect. So in this case, though, I'd round 3 down to 1.5, that rounds up to 2, so it basically would reduce 1 damage if I had a brace on this ship and I was able to use it. Now let's say you're in a situation where I've used both of these evades, okay? And I receive an attack from long range that is going to destroy my ship. But if I get rid of one of the dice, then it won't destroy my ship. Then obviously I want to be able to use that. You can use defense tokens that have been flipped over. But if you use a red defense token, it is gone for the rest of the game. Now, some other key things to bear in mind, you can't use 2 of the same defense tokens on one attack, and you can't flip and then spend again on the same attack either. So I wouldn't be able to use both of these evades or use one of them twice in the same attack. But other than that, I can use them in any combination I have available to me in order to reduce damage as I see fit. Now, and additionally, just to point it out, so after we spend defense tokens, the last 2 things is to resolve damage, and then declare an additional squadron target if we are attacking, say, multiple squadrons with an attack. And that's all of the steps to attack resolution. Alright, so here's the deal. We talked a lot about attacking, who you can attack, obstruction, different dice that you're able to use, how we resolve critical effects and things like that, and the basics of how to go through the attack structure. There's quite a bit more to attacking, but I'm going to save that for later videos. Those are the basics. That's everything you need to know in order to get into game to play with attacking. Now we're going to, in later videos, get into individual ships, into strategies, and the team strategies and things like that. We're going to talk about like certain combinations and ways in order to maybe be sure to get criticals and things like that through a little bit higher level strategy. Not that I'm a high level player, but a little bit higher level than the basics at the very least. But there's the basics of what you need to know for attacking. There's a lot of complexity, and it may seem kind of complex, all these 6 steps or whatever, but really get used to it pretty quick. And there's a few key things you want to keep in mind when you can use criticals, critical effects, things like that. But overall, you'll get used to it pretty quick. So they're the basics, and then we're going to come back pretty soon where we try to kind of wrap everything up now that we've talked about everything you need to know, talk about an overall turn structure and things like that, and then again we'll get into some of the more strategy and things like that. We've received pretty positive feedback so far, and people wanted to ask about strategy and things like that. Do you just have blobs of ships coming at each other and things like that is one of the comments I got. And while you can have that, that isn't always the case. But again, we'll get into that in later videos. So hopefully that helped you understand how attacking works. It is complex, but you get used to it pretty quickly. There are some nuances with the cards, but again, we'll probably get into that into some later videos. So thanks a lot for watching, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.